No, this was good, and every couple of days we were running through it, and the team was really sharp. And the sooner we do the next one, the better.
Let's go to Jeff.
Jeff Faust, Space Review. Quickly, any more details about that brush fire around the pad after the launch? Is there any damage to any of the pad facilities that you know of at this time?
According to the range folks that I talked to, there's really nothing in that area that could be damaged. It's outside the fence, and so it's really just brush burning, and I'm sure they got the firefighters down there pretty quickly to put it out. It doesn't appear that anything around the pad itself was burning, or any hardware or equipment that we would worry about. It was well outside the perimeter of our valuable and Mars's valuable hardware, best we could tell. We'll get more information later.
Okay, let's go to the phone lines, and we'll start with Tarek Malik of Space.com. Go ahead, Tarek.
Thank you. I think this question is primarily for Frank, but Alan, if there's an NASA side, please feel free. Frank, I'm wondering what the process is now for the team in terms of just going over the data you got back from the sensors on board the dummy payload, and what the flow is going to be in making sure that everything is set for the summer flight. Thanks.
I couldn't understand that very well, but let me answer what I think I heard. The payload simulator itself, once it's separated from the second stage, we didn't receive any more data from it. We received all the data we're going to get prior to separation, and we will evaluate that as we do a review of the launch data, acoustics, accelerations, vibrations, etc., and that'll give us a good feel for what the launch environments are. We did get very good video from the rocket cam of the fairing separation, the separation of the components, and that's all valuable information to us also. But as far as the payload itself, the payload simulator, we don't have any further data coming from it. So we felt pretty good about what we saw and what we have so far, but that's all we're going to get. Did I miss anything, Tariq?
I was just curious what you saw as like the schedule of analyzing it. I mean, do you think maybe just weeks, or would you want to spend a whole month going over what you did receive? Thanks.
It'll probably just take a few days to get the preliminary data, but we'll continue to analyze it until we launch the next one. You know how this system works.
And I could say, for the purpose of the objectives that we established for the flight, as soon as we saw separation of the payload, that was really the end of the primary mission objectives that we established today. And then to be sure that there was some telemetry and downlinking occurring after the separation, which we had verification of. So I don't think it's going to take very long. It's certainly not going to take days for us to conclude primary objectives.
We had two sets of objectives. One of the Space Act Agreement objectives that Alan talked about, and we, of course, considered those very important. We had to meet those for a variety of reasons, but we also had test objectives that will lead into the success of the next mission, and we always are looking at the data we can achieve that will help us do a better job next time around.
Right.
Okay, let's take two more from the phone, and then we'll come back here to the room. Next is James Dean, Florida Today. Go ahead, James.
Thanks very much. Mr. Culbertson, how much tougher is the next mission after getting through this first launch phase? Now you gotta complete an orbital mission with a new spacecraft. How much tougher is that going to be? And also, I wondered if you just might have any early feedback on things like the turnout there, how far away people could see this launch, and sort of reaction from the community up there. Thanks.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to hold my breath any less on the next one than I did on this one. Every launch is a challenge, and you want to make sure that it's all done right. So we'll pay as much attention to the next one as we will this one, and we will be at a certain level of nervousness all the way to main engine cutoff and then to orbit insertion. But on that one, of course, we will have the additional challenge of making sure that the Cygnus is actually in orbit and that it deploys its solar arrays, it has its own power, and then it can start its rendezvous maneuvers to get to the station, which will take about 3 to 5 days. So we won't relax for quite a while on that one until we're actually grappled and berthed to the station and the hatch is open. Even then, we'll still want to make sure everything goes right, but that will be a major achievement. So the next one's going to bring its own challenges. and the other question was what?
Just wondered if you had any early reports of things like
the crowds,
turnout
yeah.
or just kind of reaction from people up there to this biggest rocket hit.
Well, in the control center, of course, we couldn't see it live, but we were watching it, and we started feeling the rumble after about 30 seconds or so in the control center. It was rattling the roof. I guess it was the roof. Something was rattling, and we could hear it and feel it in there, which was an amazing experience. But the people who were out at the launch site itself and the viewing site, who came in later and talked to us, and I'm sure there were a few in here that could address that, said they were incredibly close compared to where you are for a shuttle flight, and that it was an amazing experience. And the words that Dave Thompson used were, this was a majestic liftoff and ascent, and I think it was. That's one way of saying it was really slow coming off the pad, and we never thought it would clear the tower. But it is slow accelerating, and majestic is the word I want you to use. But after a while, it was going like a scalded ape. So it was accelerating quickly, and everything was looking great as it climbed into the sky. And it was a beautiful blue sky today.
Okay, one more from the phone line. Let's go to Jason Parr with Wired. Go ahead, Jason.
I was just trying to get a little bit more information about the timing and things during the launch. Did everything progress as predicted? Were there any hiccups at any point between liftoff and shutdown of the second stage?
No, all the events occurred within a second or so of when we expected them. We didn't really see any major anomalies at all, and so we're very happy with the sequence of events and how it all occurred. So we will obviously go in and analyze it much more carefully in the coming days and replay everything to make sure we can get maximum information from the data. But first glance, it all looked really good. And looking at the look on Mike Dorse's face, it must have been really good.
Okay, back to the room. Let's take a quick poll for questions. Here, left.
Yes, ChrisAber.com. I had a couple things. First, I was hoping you could give a bit of a timeline of your delays beginning in 2011 up to launch today, and a bit on the thought process to not transmit any data after the simulator separation.
Okay, as far as not transmitting data after the simulator separation, that's completely due to the fact there's no battery on board the simulator and no transmitter to send. All the data came through the second stage, which is as it normally is. This was a very simple simulator allowing us to actually demonstrate the capability to get to orbit on a test flight. So the simulator was more of a nice to have. We really wanted to demonstrate the first and second stage and the separation of the fairing and the other components. As far as delays, going back as far as 2011, I really am not prepared to go through all of those. What I want to say is that rockets are hard. Spaceflight is difficult, and getting off the ground is a real challenge for whatever team is trying to do it. And you can see that in almost any organization that's tried to do it. So the way I look at it is we're on a new schedule now, and we're on schedule. We launched today, and the next launch will occur on the schedule that we set starting from today. And we will start delivering cargo this summer, and then we'll set up another schedule that we will operate on in conjunction with NASA for delivering cargo on a fairly regular basis. I think if you look back, the total amount of time it took from the point where we were put on contract for this and the time it took to get to this launch has probably never been achieved before. It's a pretty amazingly short schedule in the bigger scheme of rocket development. And by the time we get to the station, I think that will even be punctuated by that achievement. So the company, in conjunction with NASA Wallops, Mars, our subcontractors, Aerojet, ATK, and others, we've achieved a major accomplishment today in getting this rocket off the pad. And actually, first in getting this pad built and all that went into that in what seemed like forever, but really was a relatively short period of time, supported by NASA, supported by Senator Mikulski and others in Congress, and supported by the state of Virginia. We were able to achieve that. It was a great public-private partnership. And then development of the rocket itself, which was done by Orbital, and the development of the spacecraft that's coming soon, which is done jointly with NASA, has been, even though we set really aggressive goals for ourselves, and when we don't make them, it feels like we're being delayed. When this history is written and you look back, it will be an amazing accomplishment in terms of time and money. And I think that most folks will agree with that. And I've gotten that feedback from a number of people much smarter than me that this is the way it ought to be done. So we're going to keep doing it. We're going to be a great commercial partner for NASA, I believe. And we're looking forward to being an integral part of the International Space Station program and keeping the cargo coming and keeping the crew on orbit. And again, giving a destination for future generations so that they can step off from there to the rest of the solar system.
Okay, let's take a few more here in the room. There's a microphone in the middle, and then we'll go to the back. Go ahead.
Doug Money, TMC Satellite Spotlight. Frank, just for the record and for my refreshment, can you go through some of the firsts on this flight? Obviously, the first flight of the rocket, but this is also Orbital's first liquid-fueled rocket, correct? And I believe that this is also like the first flight of both of the Aerojet AJ-26 engines and maybe even the Russian heritage parts in there. Are there more firsts in there that I'm missing, or does that about cover it?
No, you're correct. Those are some of the first on this. It is Orbital's first liquid rocket that I'm aware of. Dave Thompson, as a kid, may have launched a couple of liquid rockets that I don't know about, but because he started early. But it is the first one we've done on a commercial basis that I'm aware of. Antonio, is there any others?
That's correct. In terms of first, don't forget ATKs.
Oh no, I'm getting to that, but Antonio's always about 2 steps ahead of me. But yes, it is the first flight of the AJ-26. It's a dual engine configuration, and it's the first time we've fired those 2 engines together in a dual configuration for that long. We'd done a 30-second firing earlier this year, and all the other firings we did were single engine tests at Stennis. It was the first flight of the ATK Castor 30 engine, which is a new solid, and great job to ATK. And it worked as designed, and they've got an even better version of it coming along as we proceed through the program, up to a 30XL that'll give us quite a bit more thrust and help us carry more cargo. It was the first flight of this particular fairing, larger than any fairing we had flown before, a similar design to previous fairings but improved, and it all worked as designed. It was the first flight that I know of, other than Little Joe, that was a liquid launch from here at Wallops. And maybe some of the Wallops people can correct me on that, but Little Joe was a test of the abort system for Apollo. But this is the first commercial liquid rocket from Wallops that I'm aware of, and the first liquid off of Pad 0A. I don't know if it's the first brush fire as a result of a rocket launch or not. We put as much water as we could on that pad, but I guess we didn't spray it in the right place. Any other firsts that I'm missing, Dave or Antonio? Okay.
That's good. We'll go to the back.
Is this the largest crowd Wallops has ever had for a rocket launch? That would be my question.
We'll find that out. That's a good data point.
Hi there. Well, I'm Margaret Howell. I'm from RT-TV America. I'm a correspondent. I have 2 rather less technical questions for you. The first one would be, can you give us an idea of how much this little venture of yours actually cost? And then the second question would be, do you see a cross-country competition being sparked from this possibly? Where other people are trying to get this up just as we've done here in Virginia.
Well, there's already plenty of competition going on to launch commercial cargo and commercial crew, and as well as tourists and others. And I think you'll continue to see that for quite a while in a wide variety of capabilities and concepts. Our intent, of course, is to keep going with this and along with others who are providing cargo services to keep the space station supplied. As far as the cost, The cost of the whole pad complex, which was funded by multiple sources, including the state of Virginia and Orbital,